Welcome everyone to the Voice of Terminus show. I'm joined today by Lex. Say hello, Lex.
Hello, people.
And today, as you guys see, it's not tavern talk. We decided basically to push this week's news show a bit further back for next week, and we're going to do last week's show that got cancelled because of a pandemic we had, and we thought we'd do this today. So before we get into it, I'm going to quickly go and set up whatever's going on with my chat bar here, because that seems to be
Looks like the font's too big.
a bit too big. Yeah, so let me go and
Just a tad.
pull that down a bit and quickly rearrange the size and get that put up into play. So if you guys could just write something in chat so we can see that this is actually where it should be.
There you go.
Hopefully now that should be working well. Hopefully. So what are we going to be talking about? As I said already, it's a open crafting discussion. That's a bit better. There we go. So we have some questions lined up to get our discussion going, so I'm going to go and highlight them real quick. First question is, how difficult should crafting be? Next is, how deep should the profession specialization be? As an example, blacksmith to weaponsmith to armorsmith, or blacksmith to a swordsmith, axesmith, platesmith, chainsmith, etc. Or third question is, gathering professions, separate professions, or tied to the crafting class itself? And then, what level and quality should be craftable? As our final question, what crafting trades would you like to see additionally to the classics secondary crafting trades, as an example? So let's go and kick off with our first one. How difficult should crafting be? As we know, in most games you have your set ways of crafting. You gather your materials, you buy your raw materials that you need to craft, your fuels, you go to your crafting table, you click crafting, and boom, off you go. In some games you might have to counteract some certain abilities, and others you just say how many you want to craft and off you go. Is this something that we want to see in Pantheon, or should it be different? I'll let you lead off, Lex, with that question.
Well, it all depends. I mean, when it comes down to crafting something like, say, arrows, because we don't really know if there's going to be ammo, there has to be a way to create large batches quickly, because otherwise you're going to be just, oh god, this fight's over, gotta make more arrows, give me 20 minutes, you know. But for something like a breastplate, I think there shouldn't be anything where it's like just craft all, make 5, sell it for your skill ups. I mean, I kind of want to see the end of one combined for one skill up, you know. Like, if something is genuinely difficult, then let my skill ups and the time required and the mats, let all of that reflect it. So, for example, let's say I'm building a breastplate. Okay, I'm a low level in terms of crafting. This is considered a difficult combine. Well, if it's got, for instance, a 40% chance of failure and I succeed, I should get more than a single, you know, point. But you know, then you run the risk of people finding exploits to where it's like, this is technically easy, but the numbers don't stack up, and you get more return. So it's going to be something that's going to be difficult to balance. But I don't want crafting to be. I want it to be easy to start, difficult to master. Is what I want. If it's too hard, when I first start doing it, I stop. Because 9 times out of 10 the return just isn't there.
Well,
but later on, it feels way too easy.
Yeah, the way I see it, I want to see, you know, difficulty is maybe the wrong word to use. Basically, the way I want to see crafting happen is I don't want to go gather my materials, pick out the recipe that I want to craft, click on a table, and off I go. I want it to basically be broken down into different steps. Because if I'm going to go and design a breastplate or a table or you know, a potion or something, there's multiple things that come into that crafting process alone that can make it difficult but entertaining at the same time. So as an easy example, let's say for instance now I have to go and craft arrows or potions. So I have like 3 different tables where I'm crafting these potions as an example. I have the mixture that I'm making, that I craft, that can have its own way of handling the process, you know, like keeping both liquids at the same level, like a mini game inside the crafting. So on the table for the mixtures, I have a mini game where I have to try and keep it all level. This mixture that I make, on the other table I'm making the glass vials where I put the liquid in, etc. And on the third table I'm basically giving them a seal of some sort or whatever. The same with the arrows. I make the arrow heads, I make the arrow buds, I make the, you know, the arrow itself, and that's 3 different steps I go through. Now what's always bugged me about crafting, and that's something they later introduced into some games, where you could say, right, because especially, you know, your example was good, arrows. I don't want to make 1 arrow or 20 arrows a go, you know. I want to make, like, you know, hey, let's go make 2,000 arrows and boom, be done with it. I would like to see the opportunity from the get-go where I decide the quantity that I want to go, and obviously that's going to have to come into account on the time it's going to take. It should take a little longer than it would normally if I'm crafting just, like, you know, 1 batch of arrows instead of, like, you know, 2,000 batches of arrows. So a kind of time sink should be put into there as well.
Yes, I think the time sink should be in the preparation or the gathering, because honestly, that's what I use as time sinks, especially if in a game where I enjoy crafting. I love the idea of the mini games. I love it. Like anything from say for instance that there's a trade skill that is creating scrolls of spells. Why not have me actually write it out with the mouse? Show me like glowing lines and stuff. I have to follow them. You know, if I'm way off, I fail.
Yep.
You know, I mean, that's something that I could definitely get into. It's a huge time sink in that instance. I mean, you could even say it's something like, you know, oh, here's your army. You're etching runes into it or something. You know, whatever. But it's time consuming. It's fun, assuming you're not doing it 500 times a day.
If you look at it though, right? Crafting in general, let's be honest, it's boring. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it, it's boring. Doing this, you know, standing there in front of your table, clicking and going, but, rinse and repeat. It's boring after a while. I enjoy crafting, I want to craft, I love crafting. So make it worthwhile. And since we know that crafting is going to play a major impact towards Pantheon, and not just for the crafting side of it, but for the adventuring side as well, you know, they should make it more interesting. Make it worthwhile, you know, make it seem like you can either be, you know, you can spend your time, your whole entire time in crafting and achieve a lot, or you could, you know, do it occasionally and achieve a lot, but it should be something that you can do and have fun and, you know, have variance in it.
Right. Now, there's a lot of MMOs that have done like, you know, it's an entirely player-driven economy, and even the items and weapons and armor, everything is player-made. There are games like that. And this is where they find pitfalls, because A, crafting is boring as crap. It's just not fun. You know, even if you don't want to have to go jump through hoops and stuff to make this sword, which is acceptable in my books, it's still just clicking like 2 or 3 buttons. You know, it's kind of bleh. And the second is, you never get enough return for the effort you put into it. Yeah. It's kind of like putting in $100 worth of pennies into a machine to get a plastic cup. You're just like, what the hell, right? It's like, why did I even bother? So with crafting being such a notable feature for Pantheon, I hate to say it, but VR's really got to do something outside of the box to make crafting fun again, because like I've said in previous shows, I want to be a crafter. I really want to be a crafter. But there's only been like 2 games where I've actually enjoyed crafting. And out of, 80 that I've played, you know, that's a very small percentage. So if VR can think of something that's a little different, get the numbers and the returns right, it's going to go a long way to helping Pantheon succeed.
I just want to quickly go and respond to what Svarty said. I'm sorry, Svarty, but I have to definitely disagree with you there. Crafting is the fun part. That rare item, if that's the thing that's going to make my crafting experience more the worthwhile, then crafting has failed. Everything that's craftable should have a value. It should be worth something. It should have some meaning to it. That's where most of these games have lacked their creativity, is the craftable jobs that you have there, the trades you have there, the items that are out there are pointless to go and craft and try and sell on the market because they're useless. And that's where they have failed in multiple games. They should make the items have real value with it.
Yeah, but I'll do something a little bit different on that one though. I know people who play just to be gatherers. They love the gathering. And if that's what you enjoy, great. Have fun, go nuts. But we're just saying for the people that enjoy the idea of creating something, making it their own, and then putting it out into the world, those people just don't have fun generally with most crafting systems because it's just boring. There's no real, I guess, meat to it. It's kind of like you're just chewing on a bone. Eventually, you're going to get tired, you know. And Ready Player One, I do like those mini games. I think they're great. They're good. They've helped me craft longer than most games, but they're still just the same thing over and over.
Yeah, because I was talking to, I think, Joshua off air about this, and we were actually talking about, why does it always have to be related to the crafting table itself, the actual crafting process? Why can't it be something that's split up into different sections, like having to craft that item, but also having to go and do something completely different, unrelated to sitting in front of a table, that is part of the process of the crafting? Like maybe going out and having to use your street smarts to get a certain component for a decent price and stuff like that. So like mini games, add a few more mini games into it.
And you can go crazy on kind of crazy on mini games. Say you can add like 4 for each type of crafting. That way you randomly deal with one. Perfect. Because like with EverQuest 2, to be completely honest, you can just mash 2 buttons, 2 of those crafting buttons, and you will succeed every time. I'm sorry, it's just the way it is. So they didn't design that well. Is it fun? At first, it was great fun. But once me being a programmer kind of got the mechanics behind it, I was like, oh, watch this. Click, 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 click. Oh, critical success. Look at that. I win. Haha. Every time.
Yeah, there should, it's... Because crafting for quite a lot of people is just as important as the adventuring side. There's people that will log into that game, they hardly do anything adventure-wise. They'll go gathering, but they spend their whole entire time crafting. And like we were talking about on previous crafting shows, making that crafter have a be its own entity in itself in the game. Have him not just craft for the sake of it, but have actual meaning behind it. So he can work his way to opening up a shop inside that city and becoming a representable, respected shop owner inside, let's say, Throne Fast, and then he can become a official city crafter that works for the city and helps build materials to expand on that city, to maybe give the guards some new shields that they might need or something like that. Don't make it something that's accessible right away. Make it a reward for people to work their way up a ladder, like we do with adventuring. You're going to start off at level 1 and work your way up, get your epic, etc. Have something similar for the crafters as well. Have them go up make a career of it if they want to do that.
Yeah. Crafters have definitely been left out in the cold. I mean, let's look at the most popular one out there, World of Warcraft. Okay, I still remember on my warrior, I was like, hey, I really got to work on my crafting so that I can get my shield spikes and all this, and my sockets and all this extra stuff, right? Because I'm a min-maxer. I'm going to do it if I have to do it. So I did it, and I literally went online, found a list where it's like, make 15 of these, make 20 of these, make 17 of these, make 6 of these, boom. And I'm like, that was the most horrid time I have ever had as a crafter, because it was just beyond boring, because everything that I made was absolutely useless up until endgame. And that was only for adding sockets on things and putting a shield spike on my shield. And that was it. So I went through hours of this gathering and hours of this crafting, and which was boring as snot, just for 2 things. And that, by the time Wrath of the Lich King came out, that was pointless too. So it's just like...
So let's go in there and move on, because we're kind of getting into other questions there as well. We're going to talk a bit about... we'll talk about the second one. So how deep should profession specialization be? Would you like to see it be similar to what it's been like now? You pick out your main, your archetype of profession you're going to be, outfitter, etc. And then you like in the question, blacksmith, you become either a weaponsmith or an armorsmith. Would you rather like to see something where you can go a bit more deeper and specialize on a certain thing? You can still craft everything else that's basically tied to the subtype weaponsmith, armorsmith, but you specialize in a certain weapon or a certain plate or chain armor. Would you like to see something like that?
If they could give and balance the bonuses correctly, like say, just as a instance, popping it right out of my head, you go from a blacksmith to an armorsmith to a chainsmith. Okay, that's a logical progression, because you go from just being a general, oh look, I'm making horseshoes and nails and stuff, to I'm making armor, and then from armor you're going, I'm specializing in making chain armor. So your chain armor should be very, very good. And maybe if it was like when you specialize, you can start doing aesthetics or customization, appearance items, stuff like that. So it's like now you can make your chain look like this or that. I mean, I'd go for that. And I could definitely see a market for everyone choosing something different. I almost worry that it might be too broad. But I mean, if a chainsmith can still make plate, just say he can't make it look good, or he can't, he doesn't get like an extra 2 stats to put on his stuff, or whatever, right? Then I'm fine. I think it would work fairly well.
Well, the way I see it basically working is you can, maximize your crafting, like, and you can still make the plane and chain armor because you are a armorsmith, or you pick the weaponsmith or whatever. But let's go with the armorsmith because you said plane and chain. So you can still craft even though you specialize on chainsmith, but that's added an additional special system to you that you can only do for the chain armor. You can still craft that plate armor at, for my character that I'm looking forward to at level 50 or whatever. You can still go and craft that item, but with the chain armor specialization, you've gone a step further. You've chose now to, add little tidbits and everything to the chain armor where you can't to the plate armor.
Yeah, I mean, you could just say something like, here you have like 2 or 3 or 5 stat points that because you're a specialist in chain, when you make chain, you can put those stats in it wherever you want. I mean, I could see the benefit to that immensely, especially for like making armor for lower level people. I mean, because at lower level, just as an example, say armor class or your armor rating counts for a lot more per point than it does at endgame, because at endgame you have a lot more in the pool. So it would make sense to craft a low-level chain for a low-level rogue or ranger or whatever that has more AC on it. Whereas it might not be that big of a deal at endgame, and instead you want to go with extra agility or extra dexterity or whatever. I like that idea. Or you could even just say that when you specialize, then when you make that chain armor, you can choose how it looks. I mean, right there, because I'm somewhat vain, when it comes to my character, I would choose that specialization just for the fact that as a tank who wears plate, I'm going to become a platesmith so that I can look the way I want to look. You know, so to me that's worth it. It might not be for people who craft for like more of a role-playing type of experience where they want to be the shopkeep kind of thing. But if you do the stats, then I could definitely see that working for them, because then they can take custom orders and then they can fulfill that order for players and almost make a little micro market.
I mean, there's so many ways they could basically go, like, you know, chat's discussing as well. Open up more customizable stuff that you can decide on, like stats, etc., or, you know, end up having a higher quality that you can, you know, design the item for. So there's plenty of room for that, and I definitely support the idea if it is something that can be done and would be done. I'm all in favour for it to actually go and pick out a specialization or a certain tree that I want to go down on my crafting. For instance, if I'm a, you know, blacksmith and I decide to become a weaponsmith, and from there I decide to do axe smithing or sword smithing, then, you know, that's something that opens up possibilities. Either it's I get unique items that I can craft only for that, you know, for being the swordsmith or the axesmith. I can, you know, mess around more with the stats, or I can, you know, like you said, pick out certain designs for that weapon, or, you know, end up having the chance to make it a higher quality, still with the risk as well that it could still fizzle, it could still end up, you know, getting dissolved, and I, you know, throw out all the mats that you gave me and I can't make your weapon. I still want the challenge to be there, that I can still have a unsuccessful crafting.
Yeah, when it comes to unsuccessful crafting, especially at higher levels, say I commission you to make me, I don't know, an axe, okay, and I give you all the mats and it fails. Well, all of a sudden, I technically paid you and you didn't deliver. That puts us two players in a very bad situation, because how do you handle that? Do I make you go out and get those mats again? Well, what if some of them are raid stuff? I mean, you run into some issues. If there are failures that cost mats, I only want it to cost the common mats. Because common mats, you know, when they fail, it's like, say it's just iron ore, right? Well, it's easy to get, so, you know, crap, but oh well, I can get it. I can get it again. That's no big deal. If it's like, you know, go find a giant earth elemental and pluck out his heart, you know, and you need the heart of stone for this weapon, and that's gone, that could take me months to get again, because I have to go out and form a raid. I have to compete for him, and then I have to compete with all the other tanks, and it's like, oh my god, just shoot me.
The way I see that, though, Lex, being is the more you craft, obviously, you know, you're going to gain experience, etc. At the beginning, you should have a lot of failure, etc., etc. The more you use that certain ability for, you know, making axes or whatever, you get more accustomed to it, you get more fluent to it, you get a better understanding, you skill yourself up, you learn better, you become an apprentice, then you become a, you know, a journeyman, you become a mastercraft, etc. You become the mastercraft in that trade. So you basically, you go through a process of, you know, skilling yourself up. So once you become the mastercrafter of whatever profession you've got, your success rate against fizzling should be a lot higher. The risk that you're going to end up destroying or mismaking that weapon or that piece of armor is going to be a very low success rate. But it's still going to be something that you should have to spend time on achieving. It shouldn't be something that you go, hey, I'm going to craft from level 1 to 50, boom, go out and do my mastercraft, and boom, I'm done. So it makes you basically have to go and seek out these so-called mastercrafters, these people that have spent their time to embrace and learn their profession to the fullest. That's a way of going about it.
Right. Well, it's just like when it comes to the failures, I just don't want it. I don't want it to consume rare stuff, because although it does make sense if you look at it in terms of realism, because say you have to take this gem and somehow form it and mold it into the, well, you can mess it up, right? Anyone can, even a master. Well, that's fine, but the fact of the matter is I'm playing the game to have fun, and having to spend 2 months to get that thing again isn't fun. You know. So I mean, there has to be something that failure has to cost you something. So, and it can't just be, oh, I screwed it up, I'll just hit the button again and look, I got it. So if it was like common and uncommon materials have a chance to be destroyed, I'm cool with that, because that's something that you can just easily get back again. It's just time, like a small chunk of time, versus months.
But that's basically it, though, Lex. That person that wants to craft those master items, or that rare item that you want me to craft, he's going to have to go out and earn it, become a master crafter. You want to be able to craft for these people these rare items, but you haven't put the time in. There's your risk versus reward. The guy hasn't put the time in, so people ain't going to go to him because he hasn't put the time in. So whereas you'll come to Yanila because you know Yanila's put the time in and he's, you know, mastered his profession, etc., etc. So yeah, I'm going to be getting all the customers. If somebody wants to be able to craft that and you don't want the risk of it being, you know, destroyed and everything, then hey, technically you go to that master crafter.
Right. Or maybe there's something where it takes you longer, but your chance of failure is less.
Yeah, that's another way of doing it as well.
So you're being extra careful.
You know, they had similar systems in EverQuest 2 where you could experiment. And if you messed up once, that was it. You were screwed.
Right.
If you didn't have your experimentation skilled up, that was it. You were screwed. Boom. As soon as you missed that one mark, that counter production point where it clicks up, you click the wrong symbol, that's it. You could not get that thing back up. But the more you basically experimented, the higher your skill got. So, and it took you forever to go and get through the 4 stages to experiment on this item. So that's another thing that you can do, is basically, it can take you longer, but the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. And you've got to pay attention, but there's still that risk there that if he doesn't pay attention, gets a system lag or anything like that, that's it, it's gone. There's nothing you can do about it. The risk is always going to be there.
Right. And that's kind of the part that makes your success all the more sweeter. It's just, in a lot of crafting systems out right now, because I'm not a dedicated crafter, it's a case of when I get hit with penalties, they feel way too harsh, especially early on. Or it feels like it's not even worth worrying about, you know? So it's one of these things where no game has had the balance 100% yet, because they either go too far on this end or too far on that end, and I sit there going, you know, it doesn't feel right to me.
Right, it's a crazy idea, right? Just out of the blue. Let's say, for instance, for each crafting level that you have, from 1 to 10, each tier you have, within that, at any point, you know, from tier 1, from level 1 to 10. There's something that you can do for your trade that is valued or usable even at high end. You know, it might be something that you could add onto it. So you get technically, let's say they go to the max level is 50 at the moment, so there's going to be 5 tiers. So you've got 5 different things that you can add to items or do to items, etc., etc. It doesn't matter if you've got a level 50 sword. That T1 ability that he can put onto that sword is still of value to you. What about adding something like that, you know, where crafters carry a value, adding a certain system where they get an additional trait that they could put onto the weapon or onto the armor, etc. And there's 5 different things that they could basically technically do. Is that something that would maybe spice things up, make it more interesting, make crafters feel more valued?
It would be something for VR to explore, I think. Well, it's like, I was just thinking here that when I was younger, I knew a guy. I didn't really know him, but I just knew of him. Talked to him a few times. Who was an actual blacksmith. And at the time, you know, I was a young kid. I was just like, hey, fire, and I can make sharp things. And basically, it was a case of, you're going to have to make the tools that I need replaced. That's what he wanted his apprentices to do. I need a new hammer that has to be this wide and has to have these dimensions to it, you know, and that's what his apprentices did. Or they would do a lot of the smelting or just the basic stuff for him. And as you tier up, you should have to make your tools again. I mean, what if your hammer breaks? Well, make another one. Maybe the quality of the hammer can impact the quality of the item you make, you know. But it's not going to be consumed, or maybe that's what happens when you fail. You mess up your tools or something, you know. There's a lot of different ways that it can be approached. It's just, I think it's sad that no one has bothered to really try to approach it, crafting in a different way.
That's why he had a good idea as well, limiting the crafting list. Definitely, that's another thing that's always bugged me when you get your, you pick your profession. You have crazy tons of stuff you can do. Why not break it down from the get-go? Instead of being able to craft, everything, you choose what you want to do, and that's it. Boom. Based on that, the rest is locked out. That's another great way of approaching it. Is, instead of going from blacksmith to weaponsmith, and then from weaponsmith you choose your specialization, make it happen when you go from blacksmith to go to weaponsmith or armorsmith or whatever your crafting trade you're going to take. So you've done your blacksmith and you've learnt the basics. Boom. Now you choose what you want to do. Do you want to make weapons? Do you want to make armor? Are you interested in chain armor? Are you interested in plate armor? Are you interested in this? Interested in that? So you go through and have a look, and you have to pick for yourself, like we do with our classes and races. You have to make a decision based upon what you've learnt. You pick at the end what's interesting for you, and then you basically only get a shortened list of items that you could craft, rather than having tons of stuff on your arsenal.
Yeah, that kind of goes with the whole lack of meaningful return in my books, because I'll use WoW as an example, because that's when I first started doing any serious crafting. That you get this huge list of items, and to be honest, even when you're leveling up, what's the point of making them? None, because the items that you're crafting don't even hold a candle to the stuff that you got in this dungeon, So it was pointless. It was utterly pointless to craft until endgame. I mean, if you just want to do it for fun, great. You're not going to make any money from it because you end up selling everything to a vendor at a loss. But if they're going to give me 5 things to craft, make sure that there's a reason that I can craft them. Make sure that it's worth my time to craft it. Not just, hey, make a sword, a green quality sword that has, the stats of a level 5 sword. Whoop-de-freaking do.
That's the thing as well, if you look at it, all they've done is copy and paste the adventuring side with crafting, basically. You start off crafting, your low level tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and like you said, at the end of the day, the end game stuff's the only thing that people are going to be interested in. It's always going to be the end game stuff, unless you're twinking up, so you make your low level armor for that twink, this twink, that and that and that. How about approaching it completely differently? Taking it and turning it into a profession where you learn stuff over time, and it unlocks stuff over time that is of value regardless of your level. That's another thing that they could most probably do, is instead of, hey, we're going to have crafting as well, have 50 levels to go through. No, it's going to be a proper profession that you go through. You have to, you start off with your apprentice and you go through, basic steps of learning the profession that you want to go through. You've become now a professional in that trade, and now you start learning and picking out the certain things that you want to do, and it doesn't matter what level you are, the stuff you're going to make is of value.
Yes, that's the biggest problem. And I mean, just like Going Ham said, at the risk of me sounding like a broken record, I'm sure I say this every show, is it's going to come down to how they balance it. Because how many games out there really spent the time balancing every aspect of the game? I can't think of one. Even the original EverQuest, which is near and dear to my heart, there are things in that game where just utterly imbalanced, you know, especially even in the old days. I mean, I hate to say it, but the game wasn't perfect. And although we have a lot of the original designers and whatever from EverQuest working on Pantheon and working with VR, if anyone's going to learn from what they've done in the past, it's going to be these guys. I mean, you see all these other game devs who are like, oh, we listen to our community, we want to know your input, and it's just a ploy to make people talk and hype the game up. They rarely ever listen, you know. And I can give you a perfect example because I put in over 30 pieces of feedback during the Elder Scrolls Online closed beta about how certain things were just needed slight modifications. We're talking like maybe 2 hours to fix it.
That's something, you know, that's another thing
they didn't listen.
We've been talking about as well, Smarty, for actually a lot of our shows, is being able to upgrade the stuff that you have. That's something crafters should be able to do, as far as, you know, that's my personal
They've
feel
mentioned
to
that.
It.
They've mentioned it.
Because I'm going to be honest with you, while it is great going out into dungeons and doing raids and finding, you know, certain additional items that might better my character, at the end of the day, I'm the kind of person who will put on one suit of armor and I'm happy, and I want to be able to upgrade that armor throughout my experience and add, you know, certain bonuses to it. There should be other items out there that are unique and powerful, etc., but that should be a minimum. That should be your rare special items out there, because crafters, how else are you going to get them valued? If you can bring an item that you found out there in the world that's technically, it's got a, you know, it's got good stats on it, but if you bring it to a crafter, you can break those stats down and bang them onto your plate armor. Hey, I'm all for it, definitely.
See, I think all items that haven't seen a crafter or have just basically crafted, they should be like, you know, here's your, you know, your bronze breastplate, you know, but you haven't unlocked the full potential of that item. And it could just be a couple stats. It could just be whatever, you know, a little bit of more AC or whatever. Or it could be just like an on-hit ability or whatever. But a crafter would be required to unlock its full potential. However they want to do it. You know, could take some rare materials, could do whatever. But that way, even if me as a raider go in and get the best in slot chest plate, I can take it to a crafter and still make it better. Or I can get the one that's technically not best in slot, but I can unlock its potential, and it's still pretty damn good to the point where I don't even know if it's worth putting all the time in getting that best in slot one, you know?
Yep. I mean, there's certain ways they can do it. I'm definitely all in favour of being able to upgrade my items that I get. As you guys know, personally, the way I feel, if my level 1 armor that I have, I should be able to upgrade that and carry that on to level 50 technically if I wanted to. You know, and there's certain items out there that are special. Your epic, for instance, that's something that you're going to want to get. But again, there again, I don't want to change. You know, let's say they have complete epic gear that you can put on. You can put on epic armor. You can get epic weapons, epic jewelry, etc. If I can achieve all that, I don't want my epic gear to be worthless when I go into the new expansion, but I want to be able to upgrade that and make it worthwhile. And obviously it's going to have to be a process that's going to take me a long time to do, but I want to be able to achieve that and wear that epic gear for a very long time. I don't want the epic gear, as far as I'm concerned, is top notch. There's nothing more valuable out there, is for me, apart from that epic gear. Me finally getting that epic gear, the first time I get my gloves, the next time I get my trousers, and I can upgrade those to the equivalent of what's coming out as the next tier. That's how I view it.
I've always felt that epic meant iconic.
Yep. You
know, because, you know, I'll take EverQuest 1. You get your paladin, you get your epic two-hand sword, you know, Fiery Avenger or whatever the hell it was called. I never played a paladin. And it's just that two-handed sword with the flames, you know. That's iconic to the paladin in EverQuest. You know, it's just, but the minute like the next expansion came out, it was useless.
Yeah.
It was just pointless, you know. And then like that's not an epic. An epic is something that's always going to be with you. This is a part of who you are. It should grow with you.
It's part of
however
your
they want to do it.
It's your story. You've gone through that main storyline to achieve that piece that belongs to you alone. It's your piece.
Right. But that being said, I don't think I would enjoy having a lot of epic pieces, because to me, epic also means very, very rare. Which is why I have such a one of the reasons why I have such a problem with World of Warcraft. Everyone has epic everything. Well, that's not epic. That's common, you know. So, an epic needs to be rare. It needs to grow with you. It needs to be something that when you've earned it, it's always going to be useful to you in some way, shape, or form, you know, or somehow. Just give me another quest. I don't care if it's another month-long epic journey, you know, or whatever. Just but you could take that to a crafter. Maybe that's how you would upgrade it. You take it to a crafter after doing a quest to get an item to do it. Here, you know, he gives you his thing. You put on your epic. Boom, better.
Well, let's go move on to the third question, because we're kind of getting
beating the dog.
Beating the dog. Gathering profession, separate professions or tied to the crafting class. What's your take on that? Should you be able to gather whatever you want, or should you basically be limited on the gathering? So you choose, I'm either going to be a gatherer for wood, or I'm going to be a gatherer for stones, I'm going to be a gatherer for, you know, herbs and spices, etc.
Right.
Or should it be, you know, based on the class, your trading that you take, your trade skill? So if I become a blacksmith, all I can do is basically go out and gather all, etc. Or should it be something that you can do in general?
Well, there's problems both ways that really have to be addressed somehow. Say everyone can gather everything. Well, all of a sudden now everything is becoming rarer and rarer to find, because you're competing with, instead of just competing with 5 people in this one area, you're competing with all 20. You know, because there's no filter or separation between who can gather this ore. So while it does help, it also makes things harder for you. Whereas when you specialize and say, oh, okay, if you are a miner, which can provide ore, lumber, or whatever, okay, that does narrow the field down a bit to who you're competing with. But then for the person who's crafting, if you don't go out and get it yourself, you could potentially have a lack of resources, because what if people just don't take that gathering, you know, or those gathering skills, you know, then all of a sudden your economy is lopsided and has a huge pothole in it, kind of thing. And there's got to be some happy medium.
Yep, it's very it's a very tricky one, where to, you know, where's the middle ground and how's the right way to do it. I'm gonna be honest, I love gathering. Okay, the only thing I hated gathering, I'm gonna be honest now, was, you know, the plants and everything. I hated doing that. And in World of Warcraft, I think you could only pick one of the professions. Basically, you could either go and collect ore, or you could collect wood, and this, that, and the other. And that's something that personally bugged me. I didn't like that approach to it. There's some people that, you know, really like it, where you can have to pick your gathering profession as well. That's really a tough one to answer. You know, for the broader picture, what would be the best way to do it? Should it be open for everyone? Should it be something that you might have to go out and maybe speak to an NPC that does that first before you can do it? That's another way I would like to see it approachable. I would like to basically, if I want to go and do all these different gathering professions, I would have to go and learn about it first before I can go and just go and grab my fishing rod and go to the water and start fishing, or go to a tree and start lumberjacking it. It should be something I would have to go and speak to. That's how I would like to see it approached. As far as my personal opinion is, gathering should be something that anybody could do anyhow they want, but they would have to go through the different steps first before they can go and obtain that gathering profession.
Right. It's sadly, this is probably the one thing that I don't think anyone's ever going to find a good solution for. It's one of these things where you just have to choose the lesser of the evils and just deal with it. Because I've played games where you can gather everything. and it's fine up until you get to the higher levels where actual crafting resources become somewhat desired. Unless you're like first in the door during early access kind of thing, and then all of a sudden everyone's after everything and you can't find nothing. And it does end up flooding the market with materials, and then the value goes down, and it's just a nightmare to balance. I'm not even going to beat around the bush. It's a freaking nightmare. But if you could pick two, we'll say we have 5 gathering skills, and they give us the ability to pick 2 of them. I think that might be a good compromise. Although, in the back of my head, I'm always sitting there going, because I can chop wood and mine rocks doesn't mean I can't pick a flower, you know? So, like I said, this is something that's probably never going to make me happy.
Well, technically, you know, at the end of the day, you might not know about the flowers, though.
It's true. It's true. It's true. It is a little more complex than that, because, I mean, when you come to mining rocks, you have to be able to identify ore, you have to be able to extract it cleanly, etc. But, you know, just in the back of my head, and I know it's mostly just nitpicking, it's like if I can, you know, get silver out of this rock, and I can get planks of wood out of this log with a freaking axe, why can't I pick this daisy?
I mean, it's a good way of approaching it, basically, is saying that you can go out and gather the basics of the basic material. You can go and chop down plants and bring back, you know, mush. You can go and chop down logs and get the normal wood. You can go and break rocks apart and bring, you know, the rocks there. But if you want the raw ore materials, like, you know, diamond and whatnot, or if you want that special rock, or you want that special plant, you will have to basically go and learn about it and pick, you know, a certain tree you want to go down. Do you want to be a herbalist? Do you want to be a...
I think that, honestly, the easiest way to do this would probably be restrict all the gathering, probably maybe all the crafting too, to a certain skill level. Just because then, as a new player, I can do everything up to a certain point, and then I can pick what I want. And then from that point, I specialize, and then I specialize again, kind of thing. And then it's like, at endgame, I'm only after the ore. And because I'm a blacksmith, but I still need lumber, I can only get this high because I don't know how to extract, you know, this, I don't know, ironwood. And so I have to go find other players in order to get that. You know, that might be an acceptable way to do it, although I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who be like, you're an idiot!
Let's go move on to the next one. What level and quality should be craftable? Would you like to see different levels and different quality levels being craftable? Because I'm going to be honest, I find it kind of boring when I go into like EverQuest 2 and I go and craft something. I have the raw material, the first 3 tiers, and at the end I've got the end product. Boom, that's what I get. You know, if I mess up, I would like to see a more lower quality item come out of it, rather than just me getting the materials back, to be honest. That kind of adds spice to it, makes you pay attention, makes you actually work on your crafting, actually put on the crafting gear that you get, that's, you know, available to you, to better yourself, have a better quality, have a better you know, risk versus reward, etc., a lesser fizzle. Would you like to see something similar to that, or any other ideas?
Here's an idea that everyone's going to hate, and they're going to boo me off the stage, and they're just going to be, you know, I'm going to get hate mail for this one. What if, when you're in your crafting list, it doesn't really tell you what you're making beyond, like, you know, you're making an iron shield. But, and this is going to be skill-based, that you have a chance to make higher quality. The stats will probably be random, because here's the thing, when you're working with, you know, whatever craft it is you're doing, as your project progresses, you're going to notice certain things. Like, say you're making chainmail and you realize, hey, these chains are actually like thicker, they're well put together, so it's going to be higher AC. But because they're thicker, they're stiffer, they might not have any dex on it or agility on it, kind of thing. That would actually kind of be, well, the more I think about it, on one hand, it would be good because you're adding variety to the market, and you don't have a choice. You have to add variety. It's just the way it is. But on the downside of it is, well, the market's going to be flooded with iron shields because everyone's going to make one just to get, like, for a tank, they're only going to want strength and stamina. So they're going to make hundreds of them just till they get that. You know, it's just... It's like crafting is a no-win situation.
Ready Player One said he's always hated having to go back to the lower zones. Right. While I can understand that, in Pantheon you are going to want to anyway. Now this is slightly off topic, but to put you at ease and to give you reasoning why you're going to want to do it anyway, is the perception system alone is reason enough for you to want to go back to these lower zones. So technically that shouldn't be a worry for you in the future, because VR also said as well they don't want people to go from tier 1 to tier 5 and spend their time in tier 5. They want to give them meaning to go back to that lower tier 3 or tier 2 zone anyway. And there was even talk of having different leveled mobs in certain zones, little pockets where you'll have like tier 3 mobs in a tier 1 zone, or tier 4 mobs in a tier 2 zone, etc. So you're always going to end up going back to these lower tier zones anyway. So you can go and gather it then.
Yeah, we're not going to see our traditional zone ladder, so I wouldn't worry about that too much, because like, I'm the kind of guy that I'm going to be shooting for higher levels. It's just what I do. I hate the low levels in every game I've played, because it's like not until halfway up that leveling ladder I feel like my character is actually what I want it to be. Like, my tank doesn't feel like a tank until I get to level 20, because that's when I get my tanking abilities. So I've always been the person that just shoots past them as fast as I can, and it almost feels like it's going to be detrimental to me in Pantheon, so it's something I need to work with. And yes, I hated low levels in EverQuest 1. I hated them with a passion. You don't even know. But with how we're going to have these little pockets, like say you were in a zone that's technically level 5 or 5 to 10, there's also going to be spots with level 20s, level 30s, level 40s, etc., going to be kind of squirreled away in the map. I can see myself being like a level 50, running through and be like, oh look, there's some iron. Sweet!
Can we get back on the topic though? Level and quality.
I suppose.
Please.
I suppose.
Do you have anything to add on level and quality? Anything you would like to see above that?
Personally, I like the whole randomization of let's see what I make this time, but I know a lot of people don't enjoy that.
They had something similar in Vanguard, as far as I remember. In the early days,
I believe
especially in the early days, you could end up making a lower quality item if you weren't paying attention. That's something I definitely would love to see again happen. It's not just have the first three parts, or however they're going to do it, be just the raw component and then you have the end product. Period. No. Make it where I have to basically pay attention to what I'm doing, counteract, etc., to keep the quality up, and if I don't, I'm going to have a lesser quality item. It's not going to be completely useless, it's just going to have a lesser quality.
Right. I mean, yeah, you could say instead of failures, you just make poor quality kind of thing, because that's technically failing. I mean, I'm an IT guy, I build PCs. If I'm building a custom liquid cooling system and I'm not paying attention, well, shoot, I suffer. I suffer big time for that. But you have to pay attention to your craft, and that's what I want to see again.
So let's go and move on to the final question. What crafting trades would you like to see additionally to the classics? Secondary crafting trades, as an example, for instance. Is there anything that we have all seen before? We know blacksmithing, weaponsmithing, jewellery, fletching, baking, alchemy, woodworking, carpentry, tailoring. Those are your basics that you have in most games. Is there anything beyond that you would maybe like to see come to life?
Cartography.
Yep, we talked about that already. quite a few shows ago.
Yeah.
I'd like to see What's it? They're taming the, animal.
Oh
taming.
yeah, animal husbandry.
Yep, animal husbandry, for instance.
Or
I would love
taming,
to
or
see.
whatever you want to call it. Brewing is one that I miss from EverQuest 1. I love just making booze in that game. It was ridiculous. Um, hmm. And the reason I say cartography is not because I know we're not going to have maps, because they want you to learn the terrain, but they could like give you very basic ideas, like you open it up, shows you this little section of the area kind of thing. That was my idea, just to clarify that, not just a full-blown look. You have a full map. Honestly, I think if you compile a list of every crafting profession in every game that's been out there, almost everything's covered. I mean, I've even seen ones that where you craft the buff scrolls, and you can hand them out and stuff. But
archaeologists.
We've already touched that.
They had some of that in some games. There was I can't remember what game it was. There was kind of like an archaeology as a secondary trade, where you could get rare raw materials basically to use. I think it was World of Warcraft actually that did that.
Mm-hmm.
Had a secondary trade where you could pick basically some treasury kind of skill where you got like a metal detector and find those rare items.
Yeah, so in terms of the actual categories of skills.
What about historian?
I could only wish. Basically, or you could do that with like kind of the lore master, I guess, idea that we saw before, where there's like lore of the world. That's technically your gathering. Compiling books would be your crafting kind of thing. That'd be kind of neat, especially for those lore junkies out there. I could see them having a lot of fun with that. Yeah, I'm kind of drawing a blank because we've seen so many. I mean, we like here in chat, musician. I've seen that in games where people would actually write the music in game.
So what about secondary crafting trades? Anything that you would like to see, basically, that would be a secondary crafting trade?
Pretty basic stuff, fishing, because everyone deserves to relax. I think just fishing is the most prominent secondary trade skill that I've seen. I'm trying to think of other ones, but I'm drawing a blank.
What about bandaging, first aid, or something like that?
That's not so much of a craft. But I mean, it's like a tailor would make your bandages, technically.
Tinkering, for instance.
Yeah, we could do. Yeah, tinkering would be
adorning.
Possibly. Adorning could go with something like jewel crafting. Say this is like the
certain factions.
There you go.
Those are professions now. Those are jobs, professions now.
This is probably the one area of the whole crafting discussion that's been beaten to death. Because instead of actually working out better crafting systems, people have just thrown in new crafts.
Yep.
So this is a tough one. I'm not going to lie. I mean, because especially with secondary ones, it's something that everyone can do. Fishing is something that no matter what craft I am, because my wife, when she plays games, she loves fishing, and if she fishes, I'm going to want to fish with her.
I've got another one for you.
Okay.
Let's talk about crafting gear, right? I've come to realise that basically, especially in EverQuest 2, you can get all the cool crafting gear and everything. You can go and, you get your Mastercraft, you get this, you get that. I've always seen these items and I thought, this is something I could have done with like 30 levels ago or 40 levels ago to help me actually better myself or help me out with the items, because once I've become a max level 100 crafter, what am I going to need that freaking robe for, or that bloody, that cloak, etc. Get that master cloak that has 3% XP bonus on it and stuff like that. That's another thing I would want to talk about quickly before we go and finish off, is when it comes to maybe having certain crafting items that can help you along, would you like to see that be available to you as soon as you can obtain it, or do you think it should be something that's end game, where technically at the point of end game you don't technically need it because you've gone through it all already, you've gone through all the hard work? And that kind of always bugged me, especially in EverQuest 2. You got all this cool gear that could have helped you out with, you know, when you were, you know, a little younger in that craft. It kind of made it like pointless. Yeah, okay, I've got this new robe, I've got this new cloak, I got this, but there's all these kinds of stats on it that were basically, I don't need them. I'm maxed out already.
Yeah, like I said, this is something that's going to be so just reliant on the balance of everything, because you don't want something to be given to you later on when you technically can't benefit from it, because then it's like, why even bother? Exactly. I mean, maybe as a secondary you could do something like salvaging, where you excel at taking things apart while not damaging them.
Quickly before
and that's something that would be useful.
Before we carry on, Armando01, the current plan is, and this is only, you know, it's not set in stone, this is the current plan from VR. Technically, they plan to have the first testing phases in the first quarter of this year, and the planned release is sometime 2008, you know, beginning of 2018. But that's just basically a raw printout of what the plan is currently, where it currently stands. It could take
it's subject to change.
Subject to change anywhere between now and whenever. Basically, there's no fixed date when it's planned to be released yet.
Unfortunately.
Yep.
But you know, let's support them and just tell them that they let them take their time, exactly. Give us the game that we've been wanting for years, kind of thing. I mean, trust me, no one is more impatient for this game than I am. I mean, I could go on a rant, but I'm not going to. I swear to God.
Let me go and bring up this Thursday's show real quick. So this Thursday, whoops, that's the wrong one. This Thursday is the General Scout discussion, where we talk about Scouts in general. So join us for that, on the discussion of the Ranger, the Monk, and the Assassin, or Rogue in that case. And that's on Thursday. And as you guys know, we still have our ongoing Scarface competition. And you can win a Watcher's Pledge. All you got to do is just be creative. Even have your child, if you've got kids, you know, have them draw a scar and, you know, smack on a beard on it and send it in. You know, just have fun doing it. And it goes until the 31st of January, 4 PM, when we, well, basically 4 PM, 31st of January is when that competition ends. All the information you need is on the website where you send it to. And have fun. Just go nuts. Go bonkers. Enjoy yourself.
It's an easy way for a shot at a Watcher's Pledge.
Yep. So I think we've blasted everything we can on these questions, topics. I'm sure there's more we could go through, but we are missing additional people to bounce ideas off our heads. But hopefully we'll have Kodiak back very soon.
There you go. There's something in chat there. Taxidermist, although I would turn that into something less freaking morbid and basically say like the ability to create trophies.
They actually,
or like housing.
They had something similar to that in Terra, where basically guilds could take on certain regions and they would manage the regions. They could control the costs of the NPCs, what they would sell. They could turn off certain NPCs. They could influence the spawn timers, etc. So they had something similar to that inside the game of Terra, which was basically run through different guilds. But I wasn't a fan of the way they did it. I would love to have a diplomacy political system in a game where you could take on a professional role, for instance, just for the fun of it. But it would have to. It's stuff that has to be balanced and worked on, and looked at for a very long time before you introduce any systems like that. So, you know.
Oh, they're talking about taxidermy, stuffing animals.
Oh, right, okay. I thought it was a tax.
Oh, no, not tax collector.
Ah, right, okay.
But no, I mean it would be
Sorry about
interesting to be able to create trophies for like guild halls and homes and stuff. I mean that'd be something that I might actually sink money into to make my house look nice.
They actually do have that in some games. EverQuest 2 has it. The jewel.
And as it was said in chat, Lord of the Rings Online, their taxidermy system was actually pretty good.
Yep. So, as a separate trade skill, why not? As long as they add enough interesting things that you can create, yeah, definitely.
And there, your mini game is stitching the seams.
Yep. That would be actually pretty interesting. Yep. So complete confusion there. So we'll go back to.
But no, that idea was good too. I mean that would be an interesting way to incorporate some PvP.
Yep.
But yeah, I miss that's one of the only things. Like I didn't play Vanguard as seriously as a lot of people because I knew some people that were working not on it but in the same studio, and I knew of a lot of the stuff going down. So I was just like, oh my god, like I don't want to be anywhere near this. So I played it for a while, then I quit, and then I went back to it. But yeah, I really miss the diplomacy system. It was wonderful. I'm a sucker for card games.
Right, so we're gonna call it wraps because we're technically over our time on Tuesday. So we'll see you all on Thursday, and hopefully Kodak will be back to join us. Josh will definitely be there, and so will Lex. So we'll see you guys all on Thursday for the show on the Scout discussion in general. Thanks for joining us today. We're sorry we didn't have Tavern Talk up for you, but there was technically no news to really talk about, and we want to, bring the Tavern Talk news show with actual meaning and not just make up something just for the sake of it.
When there's no news for Tavern Talk, we end up diving into speculation anyway, and that's kind of what the regular show is for. So our plan going forward is going to be to reduce how much Tavern Talk actually comes out, so that when it does happen, it's actually going to be meaningful and worth watching.
Yep.
Not that we're not always worth watching, mind you.
Especially when I
when I'm not here.
When I mix up certain words and start talking about something completely different. So with that, guys, we will see you all on Thursday.
Yep. Stay safe, everyone.
Yep. Take care.